Roll call vote of attendance here at tonight's meeting. And Board Member Tom McCusker is going through some technical difficulties trying to join us this evening, but hopefully he'll join us by the time I end this. The meeting is recorded by Westwood Media Center and broadcast live on local cable television channel, Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Meetings are also live on the Westwood Media Center's YouTube channel. If you're having any trouble logging into Zoom, please go to zoom.us and click on Join Meeting and enter the meeting ID number 833-480-56010. We will begin the meeting with only the board members and staff unmuted and on video. As the chair recognizes individuals to speak, we will unmute them. Board members may choose to mute themselves when they're not speaking in order to minimize background noise. First, we consider applications that have been submitted to the board and conduct public hearings where a public comment portion is required. We will have other applications that are not a formal public hearing, and the public will have an opportunity to comment, but it will be at the board's discretion. Third, we review administrative items where board members will discuss issues and deal with items such as approval of meeting minutes, planning future agendas, and hear updates from staff. Prior to each agenda item, the chair will announce the item and provide some descriptive context. For applications, the chair will invite the applicant to address the board and give a presentation summarizing what is being requested. Board members receive the application materials prior to the meeting and will have reviewed them. Board members may ask questions during and following the presentation. Staff and outside experts will provide comments to the board. If the issue includes a public hearing, the board will then proceed to the public comment portion of the public hearing and will restate the instructions. In this remote meeting format, residents and guests may participate in several ways. Attendees should raise their hand and wait to be unmuted and recognized to speak over the Zoom meeting application or from a telephone dial-up. We will be able to hear you but not see you. Additionally, comments may be submitted by email or regular mail prior to the meeting. When we come to that part of the meeting, I will remind everyone of the process to raise your hand by hitting the raise hand button in the Zoom application or press *9 if dialing in by phone. Following the public comment portion, the board will deliberate and make a decision or continue the hearing to a specific future date. All remote meetings require the votes be by roll call. When a motion and a second has been made, the chair will ask if there's any further discussion before proceeding to a roll call vote and will then restate the results of the vote. Abby, are there any changes to tonight's agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay. Tom, welcome. Can we hear you?
I don't know. Can you?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much for making the effort. Okay, so first on the agenda is 100 High Street, continued public hearing for an EIDR. And I see the applicant is now joined us. Welcome. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ms. McCabe. My name is Mark Beaudry with Meridian Associates, and we are the civil engineers for the 100 High Street project. And the Dr. Kazakov is also, I believe, going to be joining us. And yep, I see him coming in now. That's under the alias of Shauna. And so, yeah, since the last meeting that we had on this project, we've made some revisions to the site plan in the various documents that had been previously submitted, and including operation and maintenance plans, stormwater calculations, et cetera, et cetera. We've added landscape plant material as requested. There's several changes that I'd be happy to go through. And I'm happy to report that we have a good clean review, if you will, from Beta. And after working closely, with them and Abby over the last week. And so I think we're in really good shape here. And it's what I'd like to do is if I can share my screen, I could walk the board through the various changes, if you'd like, on the plan.
Sure, I think that would work best.
Excellent. All right. So I'm hoping you can all see this now.
Yep.
So the board had asked that there be no parking signs added. And we've committed to adding in our response letter, actually, a total of 6. But what you can see is there's 2 signs added along this driveway area, existing driveway people park. There's a couple signs added in here along, you can see them along the entrance driveway off Louderbrook. And we also are adding, showing no parking signs at these 2 corners, which are, for to basically have the turnaround spot. Since we, created this plan last week, Abby had requested additionally that a couple no parking signs be added right in this area that we are, the owner is willing to do. And it's interesting that I think Abby even had a Google Earth shot and you can actually see people parking along that area. So I think it is appropriate. So, so that was the signage. Looking also at this plan, we've added plant material, in shrub material between the 4 trees, and which are inkberry, and I'm not sure what the TM is, but we've agreed to add that plant material in there to further screen headlights and whatnot. And that material will be, we've agreed to have that be at time of planting to be 3 foot tall. So that has been added to the drawing. We heard after the meeting through the grapevine that somebody had wanted to add a curb ramp down at the sidewalk. We are adding that curb ramp now as well, even though we were a little reluctant to do that, honestly, because this is not an accessible route. And because it's 10%, and we typically do not like to encourage people to think that is an accessible route and encourage them to, for example, get a wheelchair on there. But everybody, I think, accepts that was understood. And so we agreed to add that as well. One comment Beta had was that they wanted to show a temporary construction entrance pad, we show that on it, and actually show it on the plan, which we are doing. They also wanted to add a temporary stockpile area, which we are showing at this location in the location of the snow storage that had been previously on the plan. So, and that's outside buffer zone areas, I think, which we had originally committed to. So that's good. The board also asked us to estimate how many mature trees 6 inches and over would be removed as part of this work. I actually personally went on site and counted and estimated it to be 20 trees. And we have added that in this plan note 7 right here. So that's now on the drawing. And I think it's important to note, we talked about this at the last hearing, that I've been able to verify, and Dr. Dan agrees that this parking lot is not going to be seen from High Street with the remaining vegetation up on the hill here, with the grade change. It will not be seen. When I was standing in this wooded area on the edge here, I could not see any cars or anything. You could hear traffic, of course, but you just cannot see any vehicles on High Street. So I think that was good. Going to our grading drainage plan, there's some important changes here. And I'll do the quicker one first. And Beta had asked us to do culvert calculations, and we did perform those calculations. And to Beta's credit, we have a 24-inch pipe here, and we had 2 18-inch pipes. Now, if this was open channel flow, two 18-inches have more capacity than a 24. And but when you do the calculations, because there's more headwater capacity at this culvert than there is at the crossing, because there's more fill, technically you need 3 pipes to equal the capacity of a 24-inch, believe it or not. So we added another 18-inch culvert in here and adjusted the head wall detail accordingly. And that has now been approved by Beta. So one thing that was, we talked about at the last meeting was, mitigating runoff from the existing roof. And Beta had asked that it be, that we recharge 0.8 inches of rain from the existing roof. And we received the plans that were actually used to develop this parking lot. It's an older building. It's got no gutters on it. It's no downspouts. And the doctor didn't want to add those because it would really change the character of the building. So, but you look at the plan from 2007 and the proposed drainage basin right here actually wrapped around into this area. And you look at the as-built plan that was done and it didn't quite make it over that far. So, and this was actually getting boots on the ground. We were able to realize this, that runoff coming off the roof could potentially go directly into the swale area without making it into the drainage basin, which is what we originally thought. So what we agreed to do in conjunction with the owner and whatnot, and then I ran this concept plan by Beta. They liked the idea, and so we designed it. We came up with a stormwater basin right here that would be in the existing lawn area with a diversion berm that would direct runoff coming from the roof, coming across the lawn down into this little basin. In the bottom, we would have a dry well with a grate for all season functionality. And this is something that's important with recharge basins. If you do an open basin, when the ground freezes, especially if it's loam, you don't have any recharge anymore. So we like to put in a capability of having all season functionality. So that's what this dry well is for, even though we technically wouldn't need it. We would then have an overflow riser pipe that would connect with this 8-inch pipe into the existing basin for additional mitigation. So now these two basins are essentially connected, but you'd have a lot of, like the way it was originally intended. But we would have all the recharge capability in this basin before it even got to the larger basin for additional mitigation. So, and the design storm that we modeled this for was 1 inch. So it was, a little bit larger than what Beta had required. So we designed this. We provided calculations to Phil Paradis over at Beta, and he reviewed it and approved it. So all the other documentation, like I mentioned, regarding O&Ms and, a illicit discharge statement signed by the owner, a maintenance agreement signed by the owner, all that documentation, emergency contacts, much of the stuff that we said in our original response letter that we would provide prior to construction, we have now provided it all to Beta's satisfaction. And the only thing remaining from their list was that they had suggested, which was appropriate, to do soil testing in the area of the recharge basins. And we agreed to do that prior to construction as a condition of approval, which it has been done before by the town, of course. We discussed that with Abby. We discussed it with Phil Paradis, and I think everybody's comfortable with that, being a condition of approval. So I believe that we've, satisfactorily addressed all of the comments, not only of Beta, but of the board members at the last meeting. And I think we're in good shape here, hopefully, and hopefully the board agrees to, not only, approve this project, but as proposed, but, with appropriate conditions, of course, but also grant the waiver that has been requested to add the 35 parking spaces on the project. And we discussed that at length with Dr. Dan last time, demonstrating the need. So anyway, that's where we're at. happy to answer any more questions that the board might have. Questions, clarifications, whatever is appropriate.
All right, thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Abby, any comments from staff on these changes or anything else related to this project?
The only other comment I would have is there was a question on the accessibility. I think the building commissioner had brought it up and it was asked at the last meeting. I did review that. I checked with the state requirements and for lots with less than 75 parking spaces require 3 accessible spaces, 1 being van accessible. So the applicant is showing that they have 3 and then is proposing a new signage, which is signage installed at the head of the parking space is part of the requirement. So what they have shown on the proposed plan meets the accessibility requirements.
Okay,
I would agree with
and
that.
so do we have anyone here from Beta tonight to discuss their perspective?
No, no one fills away this week, but he did provide the memo and I reviewed it with him before today, and everything's been addressed on their end. It's just a matter of, the planning board's opinion on the landscaping and your decision on the parking waiver, but otherwise all of staff's requests and staff's comments have been incorporated into this revised plan and the supplemental material.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to questions from board members of the applicant. If any board members have any, just raise your hand or go ahead and start asking.
Fire at will.
Ellen.
It's not a question. I know I had specifically asked about, if you would choose a native and preferably an evergreen for the screening. And I just wanted to compliment your choice. I think
Yeah, thank you. That was all Mark.
they're a wonderful choice. I have them in my yard too. They're native and they grow, if you let them, to about 8 feet max. So they don't
I
get
actually might need some of that in my property here because we're looking for something like that. So this might be an experiment in future botany. We'll see.
And they love wetlands. So, in proximity to the wetland, I think it's an appropriate choice
Excellent.
for what you, and I appreciate that you took that feedback and chose something that I personally think is very appropriate. So
Thank you.
Good. Happy to hear that. Thank you.
And Abby, on that note, the town selected Inkberry behind Town Hall, right? As a similar blocking of headlight. into
Yeah,
a neighbor's
I
home.
did check in our, a few years ago, we redid the parking area behind Town Hall associated with the police station, and the plantings that we had there along the parking areas that faced Westwood Glen are inkberries.
By
Can
the
I
way,
eat them?
Sorry.
Ooh,
Can I
what?
eat them?
And so far, no complaints about anything?
Not that I've heard.
Okay. I did note on the plan, it said 24 to 30 inches, and I think the agreed upon height was 36. So if we can make
Yes.
that revision on the plan in the upper left-hand corner there.
Yeah, if we could do that as absolutely as a condition of approval.
Okay.
And I just noticed on the planting schedule that the other were used. So those are evergreen also.
Okay, good.
Kind of
Any
tough.
other board members with questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you so much. I very much appreciate all the work you did in coming back with this so quickly. It's really great. I appreciate the accessibility that's not required, but is provided for the that lower sidewalk. That's, I think, going to be really helpful. And in that vein, I don't know that we've touched on this. Do you have plans for any bike racks?
No. Zero plans for bike racks. We never have bikes down there. I wouldn't want bikes down there because it's kind of dangerous to have people take that U-turn already. And the traffic from Meditech and what's it called? The development's kind of something we're trying to avoid. I wouldn't want to encourage bike racks just because of the liability to myself.
Any other comments or questions from board members? I can only have to go back and forth here. Dave, Tom?
I'm all
Good.
set, Chris.
I'm all set.
All right. I think all of my questions were answered in your presentation. I think the crux of this, now that we've answered this, so I do appreciate the added no parking signs up at the top, up by 109, not just on the entry, but as you mentioned, the Google Earth image, Google Maps image shows people parking there, and I understand why they are, but it's not striped. It's not an appropriate place to park in this situation. So I appreciate that addition. I think the next item to discuss as a board is the waiver request of the 5% cap over the number of parking spaces. I believe this request is getting up to 87% over the requirement. I will just comment from my own self. I've given this a lot of thought. I appreciate that the applicant is the tenant and not the building owner. I think that does make a distinction to me. I would like to encourage good business to come to Westwood or stay in Westwood. But I do have a concern just moving forward. If this tenant leaves, then we're left with a building with a very large area of asphalt that may not get used again. So that's my concern, and I understand it's a roll of the dice to an extent, but I do want to encourage, a thriving business to give them all the opportunity to thrive. So speaking for just myself, I would speak in favor of the added parking spaces here. I think you've demonstrated a need for it from my perspective, but again, I'm only one board member, but that is, I think, the crux of this application. So if any other board members would like to talk about it, and if everyone's ready for a vote, then we can just, go that way too.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say, it's a lot of parking spaces for cars and nothing for bikes. So it's a big lock for automobiles. So I just want to make that point really clear. Like you're asking us to go very far for just one type of transportation. So I just wanted to say that.
Abby, we have made bike rack requirements in the past. I don't believe this came up 2 weeks ago. If it did, I'm just forgetting that. Is there anything, I'm trying to recall 109 leading up to this location for Westwood residents. And I'm trying to envision what is on the side of the road, if there's an actual bike lane there on 109, or if there is a way for a biker to get to this location.
To your point, Chris, there may not be now.
Yeah.
This is going to be existing for a long time.
Right. So the board in the past has required a bike rack. So it's up to the planning board if you want to, impose that condition on the applicant to install a bike rack.
Is there an area up near the front door that a bike rack could be?
Well, we do have this area in the corner right here that a bike rack could be installed. There are spots.
I'm just wondering about, because a biker is not going to want to have to ride up that hill again on the left and exiting. So I'm just wondering if there's a spot in the front
Yeah,
that could accommodate it.
Hmm.
If not, if the answer is no, then the answer is no.
Yeah, this is a striped area for the other accessible space. Yeah, maybe something could be tucked over here in the corner, but that gets a little hairy with backing vehicles. So I think down in here, even near the dumpster or whatever, might be a spot for it if you were going to go that route, or somewhere in here, I think would be maybe the best spot. But we're
Is that
reluctant to
dumpster
add it more.
existing?
Yes, it is. That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
And it has the fencing that we usually require around it?
Yeah, it is. You can see the enclosure fence on the plan here.
Kate, do you have any thoughts on location?
I have no thoughts. I just want it to exist.
I do. I have some thoughts on location. I guess I hadn't considered it too much for this location, just based on where it is in relation to the highway and everything. But if you're going to have bike racks, they should be at the door. You know, they should not be off in some distant part of the property. They should be, so that someone can ride their bike up there and get in as easily as if they were in a car.
Dr. Dan, is it possible that there might be an area underneath these upper decks near the doors?
There is, but my concern still stands. It's not the real estate
Understood.
issue. It's the fact that I've just had 0 bikers ever to the spot. And like I said, I'm not too keen on bikers around that area, period, because of the fact that the highway traffic is coming in hot and fast and people are still cutting that red light. So I'm just more concerned for my patients as a situation than, like I said, I can put a bike rack in there. I would still feel very adamant that nobody ride their bike into that area, for safety's sake.
Well, I think if people need that mode of transportation, whether you want it there or not, they have the right to ride a bike there. I think what we're doing is giving them an opportunity to secure it on the lot. I think it's important in the vein that this is a public meeting, and the whole premise behind this is your patients and also your employees parking on premise. I'm wondering if you could speak to the number of patients that you see, and I think you intimated that when you move into orthodontics, it's going to be even more.
We've already moved into orthodontics,
Okay.
so yeah.
Do you have numbers just to provide
Sure.
for us?
Yeah.
And
We see an average of 60 to 75 patients a day at this point, and whether orthodontics changes or not, our capacity is growing in general dentistry and everything, and we are currently set to see and plan to see in our location up to 90 patients a day. And my employee staff size is about 34 people right now, and that's most likely going to expand to about 38 people in total after we're all done with everything and set up to my fullest. Because with COVID, we're overstaffed by design. If somebody gets sick, we have to have them out for 10 days. So I have a lot more staff to carry than I ever did before. It's a challenge. It's an obstacle. It's something I have to deal with. It's something I have to plan and park for. So unfortunately, these are the things that I'm currently having to battle with, and I have to staff myself accordingly. Otherwise, I have to change the way that my patients are seen, and nobody wants delays these days, and everybody kind of has to deal with it, So there's a lot of things that I have to make contingencies for and plan for. So I'm not trying to make something big and ugly. I don't plan to leave this city for a very long time. I've been here a decade, and I'm going to die here. So that's just how it's going to be. I've got another 15 to 20 years of practicing here before, my next generation takes over after me. So again, I'm not too concerned about leaving dental arts, so I'm still a young guy. I'm only 40 years old. I've got a long time to do this.
I'd like to point out to the board too, remind the board that we mentioned last time that we're actually 6% under the allowed coverage on this property. So it's not as densely covered as you might think.
okay, any other board members, comments, questions?
I think to resolve the issue that Kate raised with respect to the bike racks. I mean, if we think about the other projects, we have a bike rack at Hogan Tire. Historically, we have had bike racks in a lot of places, and it is really about what's coming in the future and all, not so much like, Louderbrook is a pain in the neck because in a car, it's difficult to get into your place there, as I
Yeah.
discovered. But that's not really that's a different issue. So I think putting a single U rack in near the entrance there would be a small but helpful thing to do.
Sure, I'm not against it. I just wanted to state my concern because, like I said, I do care about my patients, and I don't want, if you build it, they will come. You know what I'm saying? That's the other concern I have, because I don't want to encourage my patients to make bad decisions. I don't do that in my practice. I don't want to do that in my practice outside. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm not against it. You guys are in charge, so you can, tell me to put a bike rack in. I just wanted to let you guys know what my feelings are on that.
Okay. All right, since there's no more questions or comments from, can we do away with the shared screen so we can use our computers if we want to look at things?
There you go.
Do we have, I see no questions in the Q&A. Any attendees with their hands raised? I see two people out there. Give them a moment to ask a question if they'd like. And I'm not seeing anything from them. So, okay. I think we've gone through everything. Abby, you've provided us, sorry, was someone just saying something? Okay, you've provided us with a possible motion and a list of, we need to talk about the waivers first, but I think, I don't know if, I don't want to speak for the whole board, but regarding the bike rack, I would be in favor of adding that as a condition. So unless a board member is vehemently opposed to that, I think everyone is kind of on the same page, hearing no opposition to that. So let's talk about the waivers. We have to approve them, correct, Abby?
Right. Do you want me to pull them up on the screen?
Sorry, that's
People
what I'm looking for them. Yeah. Oh, here it is.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So it's the three waivers are for the standard EIDR submittal requirements for the traffic study and the presentation model. And then number 3 is the request to exceed the maximum parking requirements as stated in the zoning bylaw. And I had in your packet put together some draft findings for you to consider from what we've heard from the public hearing from last time you met in the 17th. And also, we could expand, you could expand that on tonight, but I think we've heard from the applicant that it's a dentist's office that is experiencing, a good number of customers in addition to the other offices in the building. The parking is needed for employees as well as the customers. There's previously been off-site parking, shared parking arrangement at a nearby location at the nearby business. The dentist office is the general dentistry also expanding into orthodontics. So that has increased the need for the parking requirement. Number 4 is that the proposal includes saving some of the existing 4 mature trees to be replanted and proposing new shrubbery and some stormwater improvements with the parking lot, and also trying to get that new basin on the other side of the lawn. And that I don't think the traffic study and the presentation model is necessary for this application because there's no change to the building. It's trying to fix a need that's already there. And then I would add what you heard this evening about seeing 60 to 70 patients per day currently, and also expected to grow in the future as orthodontics is incorporated.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we entertain a motion regarding the waivers.
I will make a motion that we approve the requested waivers based on the findings that Abby just enumerated.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Tom,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So next we'll move on to the conditions. Abby, if you'd like to go down through those, if you would, please.
Sure. The first suggested condition is to make sure that the accessible spaces are assigned as shown on the revised plan. Number 2, that in addition to the 6 new parking spaces, that 2 more be added to that front area along High Street where the cars have parked in the undesignated spots. Number 3, that all the trees and the landscaping should be planted at first availability. It kind of depends on the timing of your construction, but they should always be planted during the growing season. So not in the winter time and not in July in the middle of summer, because then they don't, they may not survive. And then also that the shrubbery should be at least 3 feet at the time of planting. Number 4, that there shouldn't be any use of the chemical de-icers. It should be calcium chloride, sand, or other non-sodium base due to the proximity to the wetlands. The site lighting should be turned off an hour after the close of business. The applicant prior to construction shall perform those soil tests to verify the soil assumptions in that recharge area with a member of the town staff present for the testing. Number 7, that a final as-built plan shall be submitted. Number 8 is about reminding the applicant of the construction hours, not before 7 a.m. and not after 7 p.m. and then noon to 7 p.m. on Sundays. Applicant is responsible for filing with any other board and commission, such as the Conservation Commission. Number 10, a copy of the decision shall be kept on site. And then I would add number 11 tonight about revising the plan to show the addition of those 2 signs, that the plantings be a 3-foot minimum, and the bike, at least 1 bike rack. So I believe that captures everything I've heard tonight and from the last meeting.
I think that covers it. Board members, any other additions there or amendments? Okay, so Abby just went through the conditions. I think we can entertain a motion. Oh, Dave, do you have a question?
Well, I'll make a motion.
Oh,
I make a
okay.
motion to approve the requested EIDR and parking waiver request based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions of approval, which were the ones that Abby just went through.
Seconded.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Ellen,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So I think that's it for this. Now we need to close the hearing. So we'll take a motion to close the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call vote to close this public hearing. Tom,
Aye.
Ellen,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Thank you very much to the applicants and the doctor.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Much appreciated.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
What's your timing? Just curious. I'm hoping to get this done.
I still got to get a quote on this thing. So I don't know. I got to see how it's going to cost. It's all about that at this point. So hopefully about a year.
So you're hoping a year from now you're fully in? Okay.
That's kind of the goal. There's, I mean, I can't build in the winter. So we'll start where we can, kind of keep ourselves going. My big issue now is we're parking on an angle over there. kind of like on the drop where there's going to be paving. And in the summer, that's okay. In the winter, it all becomes kind of lost. And my big issue is my staff trucking through that snow because they're not doing it. They're going out Louderbrook, and people go fast. It's a big road. And you get one of my staff hit, I'm going to be very upset at the situation, and I'm going to take the blame for it. It's going to be my fault because they're my people and I'm parking them offsite. So I'd like to get it done as soon as possible, but I'm just being realistic with wintertime construction for asphalt and stuff.
Understood. Well,
Yeah.
best of luck. Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
Do you guys have any advice? I'd love to hear it.
Thank you, everybody. Much appreciated. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Okay, so Abby, that's it for public hearings tonight, right? Our applications. So now we're moving on to discussion for zoning or amendments for town meeting, presumably for the spring. What do you want to talk about first?
I guess it's up to the board. You know, the two big ones are the housing choice is kind of what it's called, the multifamily housing one, and then the solar. You know, I'd recommend spending the bulk of your time tonight talking about where you want to allow the multifamily housing. You have a good draft on the solar, so I don't know if you want to, if you have any.
Well, if there's no objection from the board, we've talked a lot about solar. Why don't we kind of take care of that first, and then we can move on to the housing. That's my, I guess, first thought. I think we can get through the solar fairly quickly tonight. So any other thoughts from board members about the solar proposal? Okay, I guess we're getting, oh, Ellen.
I think it's in a pretty good shape. I did notice in the participants that Clara Galkowski is there from WEAC, or she's a member of WEAC, and so if you might have some comments or something, but I didn't want to interrupt anybody else on the board here. Ellen wanted to say something.
Ellen had her hand raised.
Sorry, I just actually had a question for you, because I remembered when I was reviewing the minutes from our last meeting that Mr. Ahern had suggested maybe you have a conversation with, is it Mr. Lally is the chair of the ZBA? Have you guys had a chance to connect?
We've not had a chance to connect and
Okay.
discuss. I'm getting the sense from the discussion last week that at least the majority of this board would like to take, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, ownership of this. And what I brought up before, I just wanted 2 weeks ago, was just procedurally, if for some reason it doesn't pass a town meeting, then it stays with ZBA without the benefit of our advice for their special permit, to be a little more inclusive of some of the things that we do with our site plan. So I'm happy to move on with that premise that we're going to be taking it over, and I would still reach out to Mr. Lally to discuss with him their findings and the things that they've encountered, because we've never had the hearings over here, but they have. So I would be interested in talking with him. If this board is ready to presume taking over the ground mounted solar, then I guess I'm fine also going through that. I don't want to belabor the point, and do a tug of war back and forth. I just wanted to bring up last meeting, the procedural, what could happen to us. So
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's going to be a tug of war. Mr. Lally is
I
a
don't think so either.
very reasonable person to deal with, and I think a phone call is just a more or less a courtesy for what you're thinking.
Well, I'd be very curious to speak with him on their findings over the last few years of whatever.
I think that would be a good experience for you as well, because I've seen some of those hearings and read some of the decisions, and would recommend that you have that conversation again.
And I think I mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, there's a learning curve whenever we take on these things as a group. We're a 5-member board elected. They're a 3-person appointed board. So it's different dynamics going on inside our own heads compared to theirs. There's a lot of different things going on. And I think that Abby and her staff have streamlined earth material movement since we took it on. It's much better now than it was before. And part of that was the education process to the public. So I think, I mentioned it before, I think.
And Mr. Chairman, the town meeting process may be the chance for you to educate the public on the status of where solar is from the legal.
After we're asking them to vote on this
Right.
change, then we, an education
Right.
of that. Ellen, yes.
I have a few thoughts on that. I think if the bylaw changes that we're proposing move forward, it doesn't matter as much which board, if for whatever reason, the town doesn't want the planning board to have the oversight over that rather than the zoning board. I think the changes to the bylaw that make the bylaw, our local bylaw, more in compliance with the state law will alleviate some of that. I guess for me, it still comes down to, I don't feel that whatever is issued for this should be a special permit. And that to me automatically takes it out of the purview of the zoning board, because if we're talking about something that's by right, logic for me says that the applicant shouldn't have to go get a special permit. And it would be the only thing that the ZBA, if I understand our bylaws correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, it would be the only thing that the ZBA would be weighing in on that they don't really have a discretionary ability to say no to. So it's kind of out of what they really do, which is why I feel like it's more appropriate to be with the planning board, because we do see things like that are not discretionary as far as, can you say no to this outright, but can we impose conditions to make the process reasonable? That's my thinking as to why it's more appropriate to be under the helm of the planning board. But I do think fixing our current bylaw is the crux of what we need to do. So I think as long as that moves forward, whichever board is dealing with it will have the proper guidance to do the right thing with these applications. That's just my thinking.
Okay, any other thoughts from board members?
All right, I mean, Chris, I would agree. I can connect you with the chair of the zoning board if you want, and
Yeah.
I could circulate the draft to him and we could review that, and then, if he thinks to, the other zoning board members may want to review it, or so I'll try to, connect you after this meeting, so we can work on that and get their input of what they've experienced when they've had the applications come to them.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other information, Abby, you need from us to further this along?
No, I think we have a good draft, but just, we have time, but just if you, more free reading time, if you go through the draft, if you, look at it, word by word of anything that makes sense or doesn't make sense, let me know and I can make some edits and updates to the draft that we have as they come in. You can send them to me and I can circulate back out to you for an upcoming meeting.
Okay.
Because the timeline for Springtown meeting is the warrant usually opens in December and closes in early January. So I would recommend at your December, I think it's December 14th is your meeting. I'd recommend that's when you at least submit your list of warrant requests. And so that way they get on the article listing. And then the public meetings start introductory with the FinCom in January, and then your public hearing is usually in early winter, February through March. Ultimately, the town meeting is the first Monday in May. So you generally want to have a good draft by December or early January.
Okay. I think we can work on that all fall, and we're ahead of it right now. So, all right, next, housing. Oh, Ellen, you got a.
Now, I see that Claire Galkowski has her hand up.
Oh, thank you very much. I missed that. I think she's okay.
Hi, thanks, Ellen.
Hello, can you identify yourself, please?
Claire Galkowski, 320 Dover Road, Westwood. I'm on the Westwood Environmental Action Committee, which is in support of this bylaw. And I just wanted to thank Abby for drafting this and whoever else was involved with that. And coming to our WEAC meeting last month or this month, I guess, and explaining and answering questions and talking about it. And I just want to point out that it's not just about ground mount solar. It's about accessory structures, putting solar on accessory structures and things like that. And they can be quite beautiful. And I just am appreciative that you're taking this up with such haste. And I look forward to getting it through to town meeting.
Okay, thank you. Us too. All right. Any other comments before we move on? Yeah, Abby?
I can just respond. I can't remember, Claire, the draft that we showed to WEAC, but I think it was consistent that right now the draft does change it to allowing it to go right to the building and electrical permits for if it's on the on the roof of an existing structure, whether it be a principal building or accessory building. So that's written into this new draft. And then it for ones that are on the ground, right now is drafted to be a site plan review with the planning board. So that means it is a by right approval. No special discretionary approvals or new waivers are needed, but it is still a public hearing process with the planning board. So it's a EIDR application similar to the one we just had before. So it's written into what the planning board will look for. The submittal requirements is still the notification to abutters. There's still an opportunity for comment, but the use itself is not discretionary and cannot be denied as currently written.
Right, and consistent with state law.
Yes.
So, yep. I don't know if you've had a drafts since the meeting. If you have, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure there will be adjustments made over the course of the next couple of months here and there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Abby, it's not just existing outbuildings. It's if someone puts a detached garage in the back of the property, they're eligible to put a roof mounted solar by right through the building department, right? Or if they add a shed to the back of the property?
I believe so, but I should just double check that language if we use the word existing. Or I think first you might need the permit for.
Well, yeah, you have to get a permit to build a
Then you
shed
would
or
need,
garage.
then the permit for the solar.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that those people aren't discounting, that they can't do it because of our language. So let's make sure that if someone has a 3-car detached, they could also put solar on the roof as well. Okay, now we're ready to discuss housing. Okay. Abby, why don't you bring us up to speed on where we are?
All right, I'm going to share my screen on the PowerPoint. I've updated a little bit further since the July meeting to show we worked with Tal, our new GIS specialist, to get some more maps made. So just a moment.
So you had mentioned to us that the hope was tonight we were talking about actual location of the zoning for this. And it doesn't have to be just one piece of land. It can be multiple places.
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So just to, quick recap is, this new law was created in January. And there's a couple different ways this can be achieved, but for Westwood, as this law, impacts Westwood is all MBTA communities that have an MBTA train station are, it's a kind of question of bus stop or what else is there? Well, train station or bus terminal has to allow multifamily housing by right within a half mile of a train station. The minimum density, it has to be 15 units per acre. So that doesn't mean that we have to set a minimum density, but our zoning cannot be more restrictive that it would prevent that. So we can't put a restriction on the density that would cap it at 10 units per acre. It has to be within a half mile of a commuter rail station. And it's supposed to be family supportive. So that means no age restrictions, such as, for example, we have in some areas of town, we have 55 and over only. And then we also can't restrict the number of bedrooms. So we have also in our 55 and over, we do cap it at a maximum of 2 bedrooms. In the guideline also says, at least one district of a reasonable size. So we are still waiting for, and it has to be allowed by right, multifamily by right. That means there can't be any discretionary approvals needed. So no special permit or any kind of zoning amendment. But the site plan review, the EIDR, or environmental impact design review, is still permissible. So my recommendation is whatever you go forward with it, you would outline the EIDR process of, what's required for submittal requirements, what you would review. You could still have things like setbacks and height restrictions. It just can't be more restrictive that would limit it to less than that 15 units per acre. You can also, talk about design and what types of housing. You could also put that in the bylaw as well. But I think the first thing that you should be doing is, how to get us started is focus on where. You have time tonight in your agenda. Your next meeting will be a little more full. You have some more applications. So I recommend tonight you think about and kind of go through the different options in the neighborhoods of what areas fall within the zone, and then kind of do as much as you can back and forth with each other, thinking about where it could possibly be allowed. Where do you want to allow multifamily housing? And as you once you narrow that down, then we could start, put pen to paper and come back with a draft to at least get us started of what we want the actual text to look like. So right now on the screen, this shows, a kind of zoomed out view of a half mile radius of the 2 train stations that we have in town, around University Station, and then also the Islington train station. This is just another, aerial view of that with the street names on there. Zoomed in a little bit more on the zoning map. Another thing you could do is, so you're looking at, you could propose a new base zoning district, like a new zoning district, which is kind of the colors, the solid colors that you see in the map, on the map, or you could do an overlay district. Overlay districts usually have a more specific focus, and then they're kind of overlaid and superimposed over certain properties, but they may not cover an entire zoning district. So that's an overlay district. You could be more site specific of only over certain parcels and not over, entire area. So that's an overlay district is an option, or you could create a whole new, underlying zoning. If you create the underlying, base zoning, that's where you would add it to also the table of uses, and you'd have to go through each use and decide, would that also be allowed in the district? So that would be looking at a more, also parcel by parcel, but you could do either an overlay or an underlying zoning change. We did, Tom was able to create a maps of a half mile radius around the 3 bus stops that we have in Islington. We don't quite know, we're waiting from state guidance if a bus stop qualifies. We're not 100% sure yet, but here it is showing a half mile radius from the 3 bus stops. So that, that is possible. It could be within This could count in addition to the train stations. Here is a map showing a half-mile radius from the station, the Dedham corporate station. So it covers much of the one we already have. Ours, if it's just our Islington one in town, goes to about here. But we don't have authority. Westwood Planning Board and Westwood Town Meeting can only zone within your own town. However, we're still waiting on guidance from the state. However, the state said a half-mile within a commuter rail train station. So this little area, if you did the radius from around the Dedham stop, it still incorporates this little bit more area along East Street here, and some of these streets around the East Street Rotary are within a half-mile of the Dedham station. This is an aerial view showing that a close-up of that same area that incorporates the half-mile radius from the Dedham stop. That's another close-up view of the two areas in the Islington and the Dedham train station. This is an aerial view of close-up of the University Ave or University Station Amtrak. And then what the 15 units per acre looks like. It's somewhat dense. It's usually a mix of housing. In some of these photos, we could see, this is an example that I found online. Kind of just like what suburban development of at least 15 units per acre looks like. Local examples in Westwood, the condo building currently under construction in Islington, that will have 18 condos. So that does meet the 15 units per acre. So we don't quite see what it looks like finished yet, but we will soon enough. And then we also have the gables at University Station and the condos at University Station. They're over the 15 units per acre. This is another view of what a suburban 15 units per acre type of housing can look like. And so again, my recommendation for you tonight is we can pull up the maps, and I have one that we could zoom in on if you want to look at it, but I think you should really focus on tonight where you want to allow multifamily housing. So kind of think about each area, talk about the pros and cons of each. So as we move forward, we can narrow that down. Then after that, we'll kind of think about what it'll look like, what those details of those requirements are. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, initial thoughts, comments from board members you'd like to bring up? Someone want to kick off discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a point of order.
Sure.
Research since your last meeting shows that one of the things the state did with this legislation is it reduced the requirements for 2/3 vote at a town meeting to amend the zoning laws if you're trying to comply with this. It's a very tricky situation because you can't bootstrap something. So it's only a majority vote to amend the zoning to
the
meet
multifamily.
these requirements. But you got to be careful. You can't attach other things that still require 2/3. You need to separate those out. So when we get to draft, I understand the first order of business is saying where. When we get to drafting, we need to be careful because I think you want to take advantage that you only need a majority vote for the change of zoning to facilitate this. I just want you to keep that in the back of your mind.
Okay, thanks. All right. Who wants to kick this off? Yes, Dave.
I wanted to suggest an approach that, first of all, I agree with Abby's assessment of let's look at the locations first, because that's going to be the part that requires the most, it's where we can provide the most input really. And then I think maybe a 3-step process. There's if we were to first talk a little bit about the factors to consider, how you would determine whether it's a good or bad for a given area, like what are the factors that we want to consider? So maybe we should have sort of list those out. I mean, I made a little list, but just a list of things like, is this how you would evaluate whether a given location is a good idea or not? Is it just good proximity to services? Will it disrupt an existing old neighborhood, established neighborhood, traffic flow and safety? So if you locate it somewhere where it's going to create a lot of traffic safety issues, maybe that would be a negative, or, it's a place where it's complementary. Other factors like economic benefits and sort of the synergy of putting it in a place where the residents could then shop nearby. So I think maybe to kind of bullet some items out first. And then, so that's like step one. And then two would be, when you look at those maps, to try to label areas, like to say, so that it's easier to talk about it. We could decide what the contiguous areas are. So you might say, like, is University Station, like, that's one possibility. And then maybe you call it like Juniper Ridge area or Blue Hill Drive area. Maybe that's another. So you kind of make a list, which there's going to be a lot from looking at those zoning things. Maybe there's a list of like 15 or 20 names or labels like that. And then from that, you could do like a scoring sort of thing. You go through and say, all right, Juniper Ridge, if you were to have an apartment complex in there, it's going to be a huge disruption to the neighborhood. It is very close to the train, really close to the train station and to shopping, but kind of like, I'm just saying, like, have a framework for working through it like that. And then after we've done all of that, to get some public feedback on this, to say, here's how we've assessed this, and try to generate some public feedback and things we haven't considered, ideas. Maybe there are other factors to consider. And then, are we accurate in how we talk about these areas of town? Because not everyone knows everything about every neighborhood. So anyway, that sounds like a lot, maybe so, but that was my sort of thoughts on maybe a structure for working through this.
Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts, comments, board members?
Yeah, I did have one question. I'm sorry, Abby. If what is it like when we look at the both the bus stop and the commuter rail stop on top of each other?
You want me to pull that map up?
Yeah, do you have one that's both at the same time? I might have missed that.
Yes, I think.
Abby, I think that the bus stop map, I think there's an additional bus stop down on the start of Clapboard Tree or Everett Street by the train bridge. There's another bus stop there, and I believe the stop is technically in Westwood.
That's correct.
Let me, I'm just gonna zoom in. I mean, I gotta open up.
You have to share it. Yeah.
I know, I gotta open it up first and then share it. Hold on. I'm just looking. Sorry, a moment.
I think this is where we need the Jeopardy music to be over.
Yeah, sorry, I know. I'm like, I can't see my mouse for some reason. Hold on. Okay.
I do, by the way, I do just want to say, I do like Dave's suggestion about a process. I like that a lot, kind of, and a little bit of a scorecard for the different places, different options. I did just want to see this as well.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see the map on my screen now?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Let me zoom in. Okay. So the blue radius is from the bus stops. The red is the train stops. So there is overlap, but it goes out, covers more.
Yeah, including that
more
other
area.
bus stop that I mentioned really doesn't affect the circle as far as westward, it looks like. Although it may extend it a little farther east and west, but I don't think so. Maybe a little bit. Yes, Ellen.
I have a question. Actually, this is probably for Mr. Ahern. Have we, or Abby, have we gotten any more insight into the question about when they say 15 units per acre, does that imply, and you need a 1 acre minimum, or does that mean if you have a quarter acre, you can do 4 units? Because I think as far, when we start talking about where, there are some neighborhoods where if you have to have an acre or a contiguous acre, even if it's made up of different plots, there are some neighborhoods where that's very feasible, and other neighborhoods where if the lots are, say, 10,000 square feet apiece, it's a different level of feasibility to accumulate enough to get an acre if that's what it requires to even do a project. So do we have any more insight into that?
I do not.
No, but my thought is that, I mean, when you write your bylaw, you can write a minimum lot size. I don't think, I would not recommend an acre because I think that's just too big. We don't have many of those parcels, but we can't set any density restriction that would, break that down. So that would not be possible based on, if it's a quarter acre, we couldn't be so restrictive that they wouldn't be able to ever reach that proportional density.
Right.
So we
Yes.
could set our own minimum lot sizes or heights and setbacks. We just can't make it more restrictive that it wouldn't ever allow that. One other project I was looking at in town was the mixed-use building in Islington, the 321 Washington Street, that has next to Islington Pizza, that has 12 units. So just when you're thinking about that, that has 12 units and it's just about 1 acre. So that's essentially 3 less than meeting the minimum in actuality. They could have done better. I think gone up to those additional units, but ultimately 12. I think the first proposal that initially, way in the very beginning, came to the planning board, I think it proposed 16 initially. And it wasn't a strict requirement on the density there, but it was ultimately worked through the process and through the planning board, came down to the 12 units. So, so in that zone right now, we don't, in the FMUOD, in High Street and Washington Street, we don't have a clear maximum number, but we do have the height limitation, and then we do also require residential can never be more than 50% of the commercial. So those are the way that we restricted the density. So we didn't set a clear cap, but we had these other ones that made it hard, almost, harder to actually build that. So I think when you get to that stage, we just have to make sure we kind of do a calculation on that we are allowing that. It doesn't have to be, projects, ultimately they can be proposed less or they can be proposed more, but you can't be more restrictive in what you outline in your requirements.
I also want to caution you to be very careful when you're doing this, because at the back end, should you get approval at town meeting, regardless of whether you need a majority or 2/3 vote, the Attorney General is going to review the zoning bylaw. And I believe they're going to review them very closely to make sure you're not writing zoning ordinances that are actually prescriptive, to that they look great on paper in terms of meeting what the objectives are, but they're just not practical and can't be done. So I think you need to be careful in that way as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
That helps. That's kind of why I was asking is,
I understand.
it was it's murky. So I just in how I think about it and think about neighborhoods and whatnot, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, murky is probably a very good descriptive word, Ms. Rawlings.
So I don't know if it's doable, but it seems like we would find most favor if we were able to identify sections of land in town that aren't currently developed. So we're not raising the ire of the current inhabitant of an address. Because they wouldn't understand necessarily, especially at first blush, what this is doing to their address, and how is it changing their neighborhood and so forth. So my gut is, if we can find a plot of land and an address in town that doesn't have somebody living on it, I think, and it's obviously within the half mile of what Abby's depicted here, it seems like that's the best way to go. It's a place that is in a neighborhood. It's a place that can be developed. And the current owner of that land may love the idea that now I can attract a developer who's interested in something else more than a single family home. So it may actually promote this being built, as opposed to someone has to level a house that's currently on a property and then build up from there. So that's just a thought I've had. And I don't know if it's appropriate timing right now to even talk about addresses, but I've identified a couple down in the Blue Hill Drive area that fall within the half mile. And there's nothing built on it. It's quite large, actually. So it's, Abby, I don't know if you can bring up 350 and 326 Blue Hill Drive. They're actually neighboring lots. I don't know how buildable it is, but they are current addresses in Westwood that are undeveloped. There's nothing on there. And then very close by to that, 213 Whitewood, which is near the Juniper Ridge intersection. It does back up to 128, but I know that 326, I believe, is a 2-acre lot. So it's quite large. Maybe you don't have to do the whole 2 acres. Maybe you break it up into 2 different addresses, 326, 326A or something, and you make it into an acre, or we keep it as a 2-acre. But that's, again, I don't know how much of that is buildable for an acre. We may not only need just the frontage on Blue Hill Drive. It's a great street. It's close to the train station, very close access, not by car, but by walking down Blue Hill Ave to University Ave. I thought on the surface, and I'd love to put this through what Dave suggested, the scorecard of addresses. But I think that's where we are right now, is we need to start compiling a list of addresses that may or may not work. Yeah, Ellen.
I think I agree with your thinking, because I've been pondering this since our last meeting. Actually, I think about this particular zoning article a lot. And I was thinking about, Dave's idea to zone for what we'd like to see, as far as what kind of development, like a village. And I love that idea, but I think in my head, particularly after what we just discussed about what we can and can't restrict, I don't know if it's possible to craft zoning that would explicitly result in that in a denser neighborhood. It's a nice idea, and that's what I would like to see. But I don't know that we can ensure that. So I like your idea. And my other thought, and I was trying to find on my map, but it's on my phone. There are some large parcels right by the entrance to 128 on 109. There's a 12-acre parcel on the market right now. My question is, and someone with access to a map, are there any kind of public transportation things, over the line in Dedham even, that would fall within a half mile of that would allow some of those parcels to qualify as well? Because it's right near, as far as traffic flow, it's right near 109. There's easy access to the highway. I just don't know whether or not, because we were talking about having multiple places. It doesn't all have to be near one station. If there's a station somewhere over on that other end of Westwood that would qualify, I'd be interested in looking at some of those addresses too, because there are some larger undeveloped parcels over there.
Yeah, I don't think there are any. Are there buses down there, or bus stop? I don't think there are any things down. There's certainly not a train station down near there. I think you'd have to go all the way up to Needham to get the closest one, going up 128 that way. But you're right. Over there, there's a ton more land than Islington and University Ave or Blue Hill Drive area. But I don't think it meets the requirement of the state.
I was hoping maybe there was a bus station somewhere, you know, right over the overpass, maybe in Dedham, that would give us that public transportation criteria, but I don't know.
And we're not even sure if how they regard a bus station versus a bus stop.
Right.
So
I think the
we did-
nearest,
if we'd explored this, we'd have to be ready to change an about face if they come back and say, no, it has to be a bus station. And all we have is a bus stop.
so I'm pretty sure the bus line, it's the 34 that goes up Washington Street. And then the nearest train station would be like the Hersey commuter rail in Needham, which is, I'm sure, more than a half mile out. I think in no.
Yeah, I would agree, Dave. I don't think it's within a half mile. Half mile's
there-
not very far. It's half the length of University Ave is a half mile.
So I think this is the area you're talking about, Ellen, like on High Street, some properties in here. This is the yellow building that you just heard the
100 high,
application
right.
previously. So, I mean, nothing's stopping you from, you know, expanding your zoning. This, you know, if you were to do something here, that wouldn't meet the state requirements of being near public transportation in downtowns and being transit development oriented. But there's nothing stopping you from proposing, you know, multifamily
Zoning
over
change.
here as well if you want to. But as Chris mentioned, and with these parcels here, as Chris mentioned some undeveloped parcels on University. So if you look at any of the parcels that are undeveloped, so if you were to zone those, if you were to include those in the multifamily overlay district or zoning district, you know, you just have to think that they would likely be, you know, ultimately come to fruition. You know, someone may propose an application. We have had inquiries about the ones here on Washington Street about multifamily. So currently multifamily in this single residence over zoning district is only allowed as the age restricted. But we've had, you know, inquiries over the years, you know, several about just doing straight multifamily. So that's just something to think about. You can expand it, but also any undeveloped parcel, if it's totally vacant, it is likely that it would be developed. Properties that are already developed, or if they're, you know, developed but not in, you know, high intense use, they're more likely to be developed gradually over time, because many of the parcels that we see that are surrounding the stations are smaller and are, you know, already pretty dense. So for someone to, you know, if they want to do multifamily, they likely would have to have, you know, the resources and time to acquire parcels, to combine them, to, you know, propose a project, you know, get their permitting approval, then demolish what's there and then construct. So it's likely if there's going to be change, you know, there is interest. We do have a housing shortage across the region. But it's likely if the properties are already developed in small parcels, they're likely to be, you know, gradual changes over time. And ultimately, you know, sometimes that's why we see a lot of new construction is, you know, kind of high cost ultimately, because it costs them so much to construct it. So it's likely not, you know, you can think about adding an affordability requirement, but it's not, you know, it's likely to be market rate housing that would be, you know, consistent with new construction. So I wouldn't think it would be cheap. You know, it may not be as expensive as a single family home selling in Westwood at the same time, but it's likely to, you know, it would have to cover the costs that they had to do all the construction and acquiring land.
So Abby, one of the other topics or locations that was brought up a couple of weeks ago was the Foster Block. And if you could bring that up on the map. And I believe part part of it is covered by your circle from Islington train station. But the entrance, the frontage on Everett Street is not covered by the red. But that currently is an FMUOD zone for up to 100% housing, right? If it's age restricted. That's the current FMUOD zoning there.
Yes,
I know you're pulling it up, sorry.
I'm trying to show just the, okay. So what we commonly call the Foster block site is this parcel right here, or it's two parcels, but under one ownership right here, 22 Everett Street. So this is, as you come down Clappertree Street, this is the Norwood, town line. You go under the train tracks, and it's kind of like a industrial contractor's yard now. So the half-mile radius from the Islington train station covers about
Probably
half.
about a third of it.
Yeah, not quite half. So this part,
There is, however, a bus stop that I think Mr. McCusker referred to.
Yeah, right
Right.
down there on Clappertree start, under the
Correct.
bridge.
Correct.
I think that's something else. That's another thing that we can put on this Dave's scorecard once we come up with that. I think it's a great consideration. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but I think it's, given our town's dynamic, it wouldn't negatively influence or affect the town or the section of Islington or anything visibly. It'd be close to that progressive building. So I think it's worthy of consideration anyway.
It's also, there's a couple of things going for it too, with the, across the street, you have the Norwood senior housing and stuff. So there is housing in this area. It's also, like the bus stop there is pretty significant. I know they have like a, there's a special bus that goes to Forest Hills for Zavarian, like so there's a fair amount of back and forth that goes on there. So it's a kind of a significant transit area, I would think.
So I think going forward, we should just keep that address in mind.
and of course, I think that property is about 7 or 8 acres. And
That's a lot.
so right now, the overlay district there, the FMUOD3, as you mentioned, we do allow 100% age restricted
Right.
there. But the FMUOD only currently allows multifamily, but with the no more than 50% of the gross area, because the other half needs to be commercial. So we've had inquiry, we've had a lot of interest over the years in this property. Not too much about age restricted, so people will often ask about, multifamily without an age restriction has been most of the interest. We've, told them they could do the age restricted, but I think given the site's, cleanup work and, site work that they would have to do, there's been interest, but not all the way to go into a permanent application, because I think with the 55 restriction, that just limits their market.
Right.
We also encourage usually a mixed, the mixed use. That's why we have the FMUOD, where right now we have our zoning allows for the commercial with the mixed use.
But
So
this idea wouldn't wipe out a mixed use possibility, would it?
No,
If a developer wants to, we wouldn't mandate it, but if that makes it a better project for the people who live there.
I read a piece from I forgot the organization, but mixed use does not negate it, but go back to my earlier comments, you may want to zone the commercial side of mixed use with one zoning article, the housing with the other, because it may be a different standard for approval at town meeting.
I just have a few thoughts and a couple of questions.
Sure.
I really think we should focus on the lots that Chris identified down near University Avenue, assuming there's no problem of access to the train station. Number one. Number two, is a bus stop a bus station under the law? And number three, what's our time frame? I understand we have a reasonable amount of time to get this into shape, but do we have any sense at all on that as to what it might be?
Tom, I mean, if you want to go to spring town meeting, you'd have to have a reasonably drafted, at least the first draft of a warrant article by early next year to get in front of the planning board. Does that answer your question?
I'm just wondering whether we have more guidance from the state as to what they mean when they say you have a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, so I read a piece this afternoon in preparation for this meeting. And again, I can't remember the state, an acronym, but you have the ability to have, if you develop a warrant article, to produce it for economic, I don't know, it was about 5 letters. And they and DHCD and the Attorney General review it, and they promise to turn it around for 30 days to see if you can, what level of approval it needs, and if it is likely to pass muster after the fact if it passes. So,
And do we know anything about whether or not, I believe the statute talks about a bus station.
yeah,
Yeah.
from what I've seen, Tom, it's not clear what a bus station is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I mean, is that bus stop at the end of Everett where there's a cover and everything else, is that a bus station or is that a bus stop? I don't know that it differentiates between the two. That's,
Okay.
and like
Thank
I
you.
said, I believe last time, Tom, the lack of guidance on this has been astonishing to me.
Yeah, we're
Thank
what,
you, Ben.
8 months, 9 months after the original thing is coming
Yes.
out, so.
Yeah, the most significant guidance is we'll take a look at it for you.
Right. So Abby, on this one, if you pull it down just a little bit further, where Juniper Ridge hits Whitewood, there's another plot.
Oh,
So
where?
that one where it says 213. From what I can tell,
Oh.
there's no house on that. It's not developed. So 213 down there, and then 326 up high, and 350 up high. They're discernible lots. Somebody's paying taxes on them. I don't know who, but there's no development on those lots currently. So, and they obviously fit within the half mile. Now you can't get to University from these areas with a car. Blue Hill Drive is now a dead end street, but you can. There's easy walking paths from Whitewood and Blue Hill down to University Station.
Okay.
So I think we need to just look into it a little deeper. But those, to me, on the surface at least, look like three current addresses or plots of land that could fit this bill. And we can look at more, the Foster Block. There is a large plot of undeveloped land off Westdale by Islington, and I can't tell if there's an address there. It's off Westdale Street up by Islington. But it's quite large, looks to be wooded. I don't know if it's water, so it's not buildable. Seems like that might be the case. That's why there's nothing there yet, but that's something else. And there's another one off Wentworth by the Carroll and Cherry. There's a large plot of land in the middle, but I don't know if there's an address to it or a number, kind of by Meditech. So that's what my research yielded, and I don't know if the board has a preference to creating an overlay district or rezoning the underlying district. It seems to me, Abby, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, that an overlay might be just a little bit easier in writing and, but obviously we're happy to discuss anything. So, but if you go to, if we're looking at addresses, 76 off Wentworth, which is near by Norfolk Golf Course across the street, and then somewhere off Westdale, which is in that blue area. Are you able to type in an address or something?
Yeah, I think, what was it?
76 Wentworth. If you go, Westdale. So zoom in on Westdale. It's in the blue section. There's a large grove of trees in there, and it doesn't look like there's anything that I can tell. It doesn't seem to belong to any of these houses. I don't know. Somebody must own it. But that's one area. Oh, I think you just had it. There was a square that was whatever you just had up. There's a square in the back there with all the trees to the left. No, down. Yeah, that group of trees. Yeah, that rectangle. I don't know who owns it, and I don't know. It's 1.47 acres. I don't know if there's access to it. I don't know, but that's what I saw on the map. So I thought I'd inquire about it. Maybe make a note to look further into it. Maybe this is a good candidate. And the other, that's Westdale. The other is up near 76 Wentworth. When that takes us up to the Islington, it's up by the Islington train stop. So I'm pretty sure it's within the, not just the bus route, but the train stop. So back in there, again, seems to be, I don't know if you can click on it to create the lot lines. And maybe because we're, can't zoom in. Oh, that's it. Whatever's underneath there, that big contiguous, there appears to be no house. You just lost it. There appears to be no development in there. Again, I don't know if part of it is buildable, but part of it is not. 4.32 acres of land up there. Again, it may be a conservation land. I don't know. Maybe that's why nothing is built there.
Sorry, I don't know how to make this box go away here.
Well, I think everyone can get a sense of it, and just if we could just make a note and look into it, maybe it's the answer is no right away after looking into it a little bit more. But I don't see a lot of. I was looking specifically for. We can obviously come up with addresses where there's already homes, but I was looking for plots of land where we weren't going to get anybody truly angry because it's their home. I know they might be angry because it's a neighboring lot, but that's, I mean, we're forced into this decision by the state, so we have to come up with something. So any thoughts on that from board members? Am I barking up the wrong tree here? I want to make sure that we're moving forward.
I think this is really helpful to identify some locations like this. I'm wondering, I mean, would we actually do a bunch of little patchwork of overlays though? Like I was kind of assuming that we would need to have something that was, that wasn't individual lots all over town, but I don't know, that's.
Well, this one is over 4 acres of land. So I don't know that we'd have to do a number. I mean, we can always add multifamily by rezoning down the line, or we can try to do it all right now, like what Ellen brought up off 109. That's a possibility too. Ellen.
That patch, I just looked it up. That is conservation land.
Yeah,
So unfortunately.
I figured there's a reason why there's
Yeah,
nothing built there.
And according to the OSRD, it's protected by Article 97, so I don't think we're unprotecting it anytime soon, so.
Okay. Kate?
So I just want to say a couple of things. One is I do want to keep in mind the spirit of this law, which is to make it easier for families to live near transportation. So I just want to say that. At the same time, I just want to absolutely state that I would prefer that we include as little, not include any on Washington Street if we get to that point. Like, I just don't want more density on Washington Street if we can avoid it. I just wanted to say that out loud. And as much as I totally appreciate what Dave was saying earlier about not wanting to disrupt neighborhoods, I do think that I'm not looking to see more density where we already have obvious density. And I love the idea. Also, I love the idea of looking for parcels that would be good options for folks. The other thing is we might want to consider parcels that are already multifamily. And so that at their next opportunity to sell, that they can possibly have, another unit, rebuild with another unit. Just another way of not changing much, but making the change that that the law is asking us to make.
So if we did that, if we identified, say, an existing, do we have any 3 families in town?
No, but we have 2 families.
No, I know that, but
Yeah.
if we have a 2-family on a half an acre somewhere in the Islington area, which I think is where most of our multifamilies are. So now we have 2 houses there. The density is going to go up to 8 in a half an acre. So
Right, but maybe we don't pick every lot.
no, I'm just talking about one lot, one 2-family home that's set on a half an acre of land. We're going to have to turn that density of 2 into a density of 7 on that half acre of land. Somehow, some developer's going to come in. And I'm just speaking to your point of you don't want to make a dense situation even more dense. So I think you have to, almost by default. The math requires that we get
Yeah,
more.
so that's exactly why I think maybe we want to try to choose parcels if we can.
Parcels that are already developed as multifamily, or parcels that exist but aren't developed?
Both.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no clear definition of what spot zoning is. But generally, when you create a zoning district or an overlay district, they should be contiguous. So we want to find, if you found a parcel that, was large, again, I guess we mentioned the 22 Everett Street, that's 7 acres on its own, but you wouldn't want to create little pockets of just 1 and 2 pieces that aren't contiguous, because that could be considered spot zoning. And so they should be contiguous. If there's a larger parcel that you find, it could be one whole parcel or a part of a parcel, but usually you try to make the district flow, so it's not piecemeal throughout the whole town. And going back to what Kate was saying, you could, create a new overlay district over areas that are already developed. So we have some that may be pre-existing, or that they got special permits. So I guess over time, if they were sold or developed, then the difference for the property owner would be that it could be, by right, and they would have different restrictions on any new development. So it would be an EIDR review, rather than a special permit. So I think we do have some 3 and 4 properties. I think there might be at least 1 or 2 near the Islington train station on Grafton Street. So, that may not, again, the zoning, nobody has to develop, create higher density, but if someone was interested, they can propose a higher density than what we currently allow with the zone when you figure it out where.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I was thinking like those properties on Blue Hill Drive. If we if we labeled that as sort of the Blue Hill juniper sort of area, then it could be, it's a separate issue if we actually say, well, we think that's a great location. Now, how do we draw the boundaries? Maybe you include the gables, you know, if you can make it contiguous, though, it may have to bring in some properties that are that you weren't thinking about. But if you could connect something, that seems to be a reasonable shape, you know, like as opposed to just sort of 3 individual parcels. But if you include the gables area, although it's already, you know, it's already developed and it's under the University Ave plan, so it's not, it's probably locked in, but I don't know.
Dave, to your point, if I'm looking at this map, the Whitewood address, immediately behind it is that pathway. That's owned by University Station. I think it's the Gables, but I'm not sure. And that goes all the way down to the corner of University Ave. So it would allow us as a contiguous plot of land to go incorporate the Gables. The others on Blue Hill are up maybe a quarter mile, a little farther up the road. So you wouldn't be able to do that contiguous without affecting already developed homes on Blue Hill.
But you could, maybe you also include one university with it as an overlay district, and not, again, we don't know, we're not trying to cause something to happen, but it would be, that part is already developed. But then if you connect it, you have like an L-shaped area there that's pretty substantial size, and some of it is already, it's apartment, it's the Gables. Some of it is commercially fully
Yeah, you could.
developed.
You're right.
And you create an overlay district, and then, yeah, maybe 30 years down the road, someone wants to buy up that one University Ave and build something big. That might not be the worst thing in the world, because it's like, it's right there next to the big garage. And
But I think that's 2/3 in Dedham.
oh, yeah, I see. That's
Oh,
So
right.
only part of it is in Westwood.
wow, that building is I thought it was like the back third, but it's the front, the
It's
one
the
university.
frontage on University is Westwood.
Yeah.
So Pat, would that preclude us from being able to zone that lot as an overlay?
I don't think that it would, but I'm not sure that if that was the only lot you did, that it would be well received.
Yeah,
No, I'm saying, no, we would use that as the hinge to turn up Blue Hill.
That
going all
makes
the way
more
up.
sense. Yeah.
And then that would allow us to incorporate all of the Gables, that walking area, the Whitewood address, and then make a left turn as you hit University, go up Blue Hill on the Dedham side of Blue Hill Ave to incorporate those other addresses that are currently undeveloped.
Perhaps is the answer I can give you tonight.
All right, fair enough. I think this whole thing is a perhaps, because we don't know what we're doing. We don't know what
I think it's
we're solving.
perhaps across the state, because there's been so little, I've seen so little movement and so little chatter about what towns are actually doing. Abby, in your association, or is there much discussion about what towns are doing?
No, I haven't seen anything. I know, just saw, the Mass Planners listserv, maybe at the beginning of the summer. I think the Attorney General's office said they're working on more guidance.
Yeah, that's what I got today as well. Yeah, more guidance is coming.
I have another off the wall question of, so the reason, sort of thinking about it from a negative point of view, which are not, again, we want to approach this positively, but like, what is the actual cost of the failure to comply? And I mean, it's something about we would not be eligible for certain grants and all. As part of this whole presentation, as we discuss this, it would be very helpful to be able to say, failure to comply would, it means this many dollars, basically. But if the answer is that no, we don't get any of those grants, we've never gotten any grants like that, like that would be a different story. It would be helpful to have that information so that it's either.
So you're asking, Dave, go ahead, Abby.
Oh, well, I was going to say, the consequences if an application came forward, within a half-mile multifamily, and you don't have any zoning, the applicant could argue, that they're entitled to.
It's all zoned.
With a multifamily, and then, at some point, probably not yet, but at some point, maybe in a year or so, the state would say, well, why not? There is no opting out of this. So essentially, if an application were to come forward and someone made the argument, multifamily has to be allowed as of right within a half mile of a train station. If we don't have any zoning, we can't, if we haven't adopted zoning at a certain point, I think that will come out with the state's guidance, that towns, after a certain point, they either have to adopt it or face the consequences. I don't know when that is.
So it seems to me what you're saying, that the true negative result is someone could go over into Islington within a half a mile of the Islington train stop, buy a plot of land, buy a house, tear it down and build something density to whatever acreage they have. If it's half an acre, they could build 7 homes or a high rise, so to speak, of 7 multifamily units. Is that right? If we
They
don't
could
say
also,
where,
if they had the resources, they could also parcel assembly. So they could assemble several parcels and do
yeah,
that.
if they
But
have the,
that's not what I understood. The current law is simply saying that if you don't do this, you wouldn't be eligible for, it's a carrot approach.
It is a carrot approach right now, and there doesn't appear to be a stick. But I have to think, I agree with Abby, that at some point in time, a aggressive developer will for
challenge.
those communities that don't address this, will figure out a way that's beneficial to them.
I don't think that's, that's sort of guessing what could happen in the future, and there'd probably be additional legislation that would have to get passed and supported by everybody. And I don't think that argument will be helpful in the overall sort of talking about this, right? Because it is not.
No, there's no, you can't stand in front of town meeting and say, if you don't do this, this is going to occur.
Right.
You're not going to have that kind of tool that I can see, Dave. And I can understand why you'd like to know what that is.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? Yeah, Kate.
Sorry, just one more thought with the foster block, which I really like that idea, like a lot. Pardon the pun, a lot. Is there a way that we could, and I don't know the specifics of this, but to get from that foster block to the Islington station, you have to kind of walk around, right, and up Washington Street to get there. Is that right? There's no.
Well, there is a cut through now. If you get back into Frugal Fanny's, we now have that walk through that gets you closer to Islington, but you're kind of parallel to one another. I don't know that you're saving a ton of distance.
But it already exists, Chris?
Yeah.
It's there. Okay, great. Good.
Yeah, the
Great.
cut
That was
through.
my-
It dumps you right at the bridge, the train bridge by Morrison.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically it's the property of the owner of Wilson Way property, though, right? And so if you announced to them that it was going to be, it was great because it allowed everyone from the new multifamily development to get there. They might decide to close it or something. Because when we reviewed that, remember there was some. It really depends on the tenant, what the tenant wants out of that property. We have a great pathway now there, but I'd be cautious about
Overusing.
Yeah.
Or advertising to overuse.
Yeah.
Right.
We're assuming, just assuming anything.
Right. If you can see on the map, this is Wilson Way. This is the building at the end. And then, it's hard to see here, but there is a sidewalk that comes out through here that goes right beside the bridge on East Street. And it is on private property currently.
Who was the
So we-
tenant at that building that put it in? I forget. A medical.
Was it the Beth Israel Deaconess came
they-
maybe 2 years ago or almost 2 years ago now?
Right. Then they put that in along with the landlord, I believe.
Right. The property owner, got approval for it, but then constructed it with the Beth Israel tenant fit out.
Right. So my point being, and I think this was already said before, but I'm understanding it now even by foot, because the entryway isn't within the half mile, the state could kick that back to and say,
They could, yeah, they haven't, they haven't told us partial of the lot has to be there or all of the lot has to be within it, because in our particular situation, and they haven't even told us if it's as a crow flies or if it's a drivable area or walkable. I don't know. So that's why I say, even if we go forward on this Foster block, we have to be ready to change gears to another location if we get guidance in December saying, no, that won't work. So we have to be ready with something else, possibly. They may come back, and that's why we were saying with that bus stop right there and the bus stops that go up Washington, it may make it even more appealing where they might say, you know what, part of it is there, that's fine, it meets the spirit. They may not, we don't know, so.
Thank you.
That's why I think developing a number of lots is at least early on, it's good to have something in your back pocket to move back to.
Yeah, I mean, zoning, when you design zoning districts or overlay districts, they don't have to cover the full property. Oftentimes they will follow property lines, but sometimes you'll see them like what they used to do in the 50s and 60s. A lot of times would just do, straight from the center line of the street, and that's where they would cut lots kind of right in half. My recommendation, if you were looking at this lot, it's about half of it is in the half-mile radius. I don't think the state, you would still want, a reasonable size within the half mile. I don't think they would have a problem with going beyond, but this is the property. It's kind of hard to see here at the aerial, but this is the back portion of that Everett Street lot that is within that half-mile boundary.
Would you say it was about 7 acres?
The whole lot is about, let's see. Why am
So
I not?
that back part looks to me to be 2.5 to 3 acres possibly.
Yeah.
I
So
don't know how much is buildable, but.
Right. So, I would suggest if you're looking at this, I would think you want to expand it a little bit more than just, it could be, this and maybe a little, this is,
What about doing that? Some of those buildings using, and if we know that it's been difficult to get a comprehensive plan back there because there's 7 or 8 different owners. But if that one owner of 90 wanted to sell it and it's zoned with an FMUOD, that or the Foster block, then maybe that could be a multifamily development. I don't know.
this is like there's I think a dialysis center in there now.
Right.
I think this is the Frugal Fannies right here, I believe.
And it may not come to fruition, but if we had the Foster block and whatever that lot is for 90 Glacier Drive, maybe that would be enough for this location. And then we look into the Blue Hill Ave area for that location. I mean, we're not affecting any homes here. It's on the off chance that 90 wants to sell to a developer or the Foster block, and they could sell it. They could buy the land for both and make a more comprehensive, larger plan there. They have access to either Washington Street or the cut through up to the train station that we just talked about. And then we can, again, look at the Blue Hill Drive, Whitewood area, and maybe Gables and One University, as Dave pointed out. I don't know of any other places unless we lump together homes. I don't know of any other places in town that gives us this opportunity.
Yeah, and can I just say what the other thing I just like about the Foster block is it does make things really convenient for the residents. It is a good place to be if you're a commuter and you want to live in Westwood and you have it's a good place, but
Yeah.
it doesn't like you said, it doesn't disrupt any existing older neighborhoods.
Yeah, there's no argument about you're wrecking the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Well, you're not. There's really nothing there right now. It's trucks are parked there throughout the day.
Tumble bus.
Yeah, the tumble bus.
It comes with a tumble bus.
I think,
And to that end, I think Blue Hill Drive is a great street to live on, especially now that it's a dead end street. I don't think anyone could say you're sticking them in the boondocks. Right? That's not at all. It's fairly easy to go up Blue Hill to Canton Street to get on 128. You're not dealing with traffic to go to work if you're driving, or you can walk down to the train station and walk obviously to Wegmans or Target or whatever.
I wonder if we could have different parking regulations, like, so that Blue Hill area would be the ideal location where it's so close to public transit, to the shopping area, to all of that. You can make an argument for a car-free sort of place. Like, not that it would make it completely car-free, but maybe you could have lower parking requirements, because I guarantee the issue that will come up is that there's only one way in. Blue Hill Drive right now is very, there's not a lot of traffic there. It's like, it's wonderful that it's no longer a big cut through, everybody racing to the train station. If you have a high density development there, then it's gonna, that is disruptive. But maybe you could make the development get a limited amount of parking for the residents and all, like, I don't know, just an idea for.
I think the downside is if you have more people or more cars than spots, they're going to be on Blue Hill Drive. They're going to park somewhere. They own the car. They need to put it somewhere.
And you won't be able to limit much. It's got to be a by right thing. So
right,
that's the unintended consequence. It's like, all right, we'll just park on the street. But.
Well, I mean, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but if we, like the parking that the unit next to Islington Pizza, they decided to go with underground parking. That could be the developer's solution to how to park this thing. I mean, because if he wants units to sell, he's got to have cars, so that might be his solution, to go underground.
My concern was more about the traffic coming in, like how if you add 100 people, then that's going to be a huge, the impact is downstream more than it is, like having the building there isn't so bad, but adding a lot of traffic coming in and out of Blue Hill Drive would be something to think about.
Well, I think the state is anticipating that those that partake in this are using the trains or the buses or whatever. That's the point of this whole thing. I think why they want it to be a half mile away. Not everyone's going to participate in it. They're going to take advantage of it to get into Westwood as a multifamily or something like that. But that's just the nature of the beast. And it can't go all according to plan. There's always going to be some outliers or something. You just hope that it's not that it's the exception, not the norm. So Pat, is there anything we brought up? I think you're never shy about jumping in, but is there anything that we brought up that you say, wait a minute, this might not fly with the AG, or are we barking up the right?
No, I think if this is an airplane that you're trying to land, you've maybe gone from 40,000 feet to 37,000 feet. So there's a long way to the ground is what I'm trying to say.
Do we still have fuel?
You still have fuel.
Okay, then we have control.
Yeah, and if this was easy, it would be done already. This is by far not an easy process, and I think you're fortunate to have Abby help guiding you on it, because she is very knowledgeable. And we'll do the best we can to stay in front of whatever guidance that we can find for you as we move forward.
All right. Yeah, Abby.
I think you've made some, a lot of good progress tonight, even if it may not feel like it, but we've heard, your initial thoughts and things to think about. I was going to bring up something else and I forgot. Oh yeah. I like Dave's idea about this, the kind of scorecard. Think about your overarching purpose. Does anyone else have any other, these overarching goals? I heard things like walkability, near public transit, economic opportunity. What other of these, we can create that list, and then, next time at your next meeting or when you have your next opportunity to talk about, we could kind of put together a little scorecard that will ultimately serve as your purpose. I think when you do write the bylaw, usually it starts off with, the purpose of a section. So you'll have that purpose, and then you flow into the details and what's required. So if anyone else has any ideas, I think I heard, family supportive housing.
Well, that's what the state is directing us. to family housing.
Yeah, and when you develop the scorecard, that will help you write the purpose, and the scorecard will also, in the long run, help us defend whatever we try to do to the state and why we're doing it. So we have a rationale that we can stand firmly on.
So I had a thought about Abby's comment that when you develop, I think it was Abby who said it. If it wasn't, I'm sorry. When you develop a zone, an overlay, or you rezone it, you have to do it with the intent that something's going to get built there eventually to fit this zoning. And that is the spirit of what we're trying to do here. So I just had the thought of, all right, if we create a huge FMU or an overlay district from the first spot that I identified on Blue Hill all the way down to Gables, and if somehow it does happen that it's all developed, is that what we want? I mean, or do we get the unintended consequence that Dave brought up about cars? And is that what we're going for here? Are we trying to make 12 acres or 15 acres of land multifamily in Westwood? I know that it's been housing has been a hot topic in the town with regard to affordable housing, but this thing isn't touching affordable housing at all, at least not on the surface. And I know we brought up the possibility of an affordability component, but I don't know how we do that without it making a restriction of some kind on the developer. So I just want to make sure we don't bite off more than we want here. We might want to do it all, but we might look at it and go, you know what, that would be too much. So I think in future meetings, we need to really think about how much acreage, just because it's available, do we need to make it available for multifamily? And if the answer is yes, then fine. But let's just think about it in those terms. Because I don't know what the consequence could be. You know, there could be a lot of fallout if it all gets developed as a multifamily.
Well, and this could be good to do it in small steps here, since we're not seeing others like leaping forward, and we're not hearing about other activity in other towns. So maybe the thing to do is really just start small, pick one of these, one location.
Comply with the state.
Yeah, and then if they come
doing.
back and say it's inadequate, then we have, we can add to it, but not to like start by trying to identify 7 zones or something.
Right. Yeah, Kate.
Just one other thing to think about in this scorecard, and I do appreciate, imagining it all gets built, whatever we zone is going to get built. Just considering how it's going to impact the elementary schools, where the zones where we're talking about, can they handle that many? If assume that all gets built, and assume every unit has 2 kids in the elementary schools, or even 1, and how many students can our elementary schools accommodate?
Yeah, if it gets a lot, they may have to rezone for schools.
Right, but I think we're talking about only a couple of elementary schools that are going to be affected.
No, we're talking about Hanlon and Downey.
Yeah.
Or Hanlon, the new, whatever, the iteration that will be.
Yeah.
But that's where those kids typically would go on Washington. I believe they go to the Hanlon location. So it may change in the future with the school district changing, but I don't know. But right now, all the kids, elementary school kids and the Gables go to Downey, I believe. And obviously the middle school and high school go to the middle school and high school. So,
I mean, just another thing to consider as
it's another fallout, another thing you have to consider of how are you changing the neighborhood? Not just by a building, but the people who live there. So it may be worthy of a question of the school department. I don't know. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments about a housing choice? No? Okay. So we'll move on. The next topic, I think, was the minutes. Was that next?
Oh, wait, I just want to say, Chris,
Oh, yeah.
if you don't mind, for anyone that's watching it, there are some people in the audience.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, we
I
could
don't-
open it
but
up.
also, so I'd like the planning board to keep working this. Your upcoming meetings. Your next meeting is planned for September 21st. I know you do have a lot of applications on for that meeting. Actually, the Hanlon Elementary School is on for that meeting. I will be getting you that material, but your time may be limited at that meeting, but we can see as that gets closer on your agenda. But you have 4 new public hearing applications on in September. But you do have, 2 meetings in October, 2 meetings in November, and 1 in December. So when it gets closer, we'll put out an agenda. And if you have time on your September 21st meeting, we can talk about it again, but it might be a long meeting on the 21st.
Do you feel we need to talk on the 21st about the solar? If we don't make any changes to the draft that we have written?
You may not have time. You might want to push that to your October meeting if you think so. I just think it's going to take a while to get through 4 public hearings. You're actually also going to have a concurrent meeting with the Conservation Commission on the Hanlon School too. So
you're saying vacation is over? Now we got to work. All right. Okay, so meeting minutes. Did everyone have a chance to read? I think that's next. Forgive me if it's not, but.
Folks, do you need me for anything else?
I don't believe so, unless you want to weigh in on minutes.
I do not.
I didn't think so. Thank you very much, Pat. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night, Pat.
All right, any additions, amendments to the minutes? Anyone see anything out of order, out of place? Okay, then entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes as submitted. Forget the date. If you can include that in your motion, sorry.
Motion to accept the minutes from August 17th. As
Second. Oh,
Okay, we have
sorry.
a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the minutes? Okay, do a roll call vote. Tom?
Aye.
Kate?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So the minutes are passed. Can't seem to find the outline here. Abby, what's next? Is that it?
That's it.
You have any notices to read to us or any information you want to give to us about anything? Or we're done?
Nope, I think you're done.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, Ellen,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. So we are adjourned. We'll see you on the, what date?
21st.
21st. Really? That far out? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks.
And
Good luck
everybody.
in school.
Good night, all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good
good
luck.
luck.
First day of
Have a
school
good
for the
first
kids.
day, whoever's going tomorrow.